On a quiet night in Murphy's diner, rain pressed against the windows while a 10-year-old boy named Theodore sat alone in a corner booth, drowning in clothes 2 sizes too big and staring into nothing. He hadn't spoken in weeks, but his silence didn't stop Layla Parker, the 29-year-old waitress with hazel eyes and an unnoticed grace, from sliding a plate of pancakes in front of him, whispering that they had been made by mistake and shouldn't go to waste. Across the counter, Chloe Martinez, her co-worker and rival, rolled her eyes and filmed the scene on her phone, whispering to the camera that Layla was performing for attention. Linda Brooks, the hardened manager, dragged Layla into the office and scolded her, warning that Murphy's Diner was no charity and threatening her job if she kept feeding strays. But through the glass they both saw it. Theodore lifting the fork with trembling fingers, his eyes softening with the first flicker of life, gratitude spreading across his face as if someone had finally noticed he existed. The next morning, Theodore returned, pressing his face to the diner's window until Layla unlocked the door. She offered him toast with strawberry jam, and for the first time he spoke, so quietly she almost missed it. "It's you. You're like my mom used to be." He handed her a napkin drawing of a woman with kind eyes standing beside a plate of food, a stick figure reflection of the comfort she had given. The gesture broke something open in Layla, reminding her of her own mother lost too soon, and the nights she herself had gone hungry as a child. At the next booth, Mr. Whitaker, a 71-year-old retired teacher, watched quietly. He reminded Layla that the children who remembered him weren't those he had lectured, but those he had fed when they were hungry. And he told her that courage wasn't about noise, but about planting seeds that might one day grow unseen. Not everyone saw it that way. When Everett Hayes, a man in a sharp gray coat with the polished presence of someone important, walked in and sat at a corner booth, he observed the boy and the waitress with quiet intensity. Chloe, however, uploaded her recording with a cruel caption: "Local waitress faking kindness for attention." Within hours, the video spread online, drawing ridicule instead of support. Customers whispered, phones pointed at Layla, and Linda's patience wore thinner by the day. Theodore, ashamed, vanished for 3 long days, and the diner filled only with gossip and sneers. On the 3rd day, Everett finally rose from his booth. His voice carried weight when he asked if the boy wasn't coming anymore. Layla admitted he had been gone for days. Chloe smirked that good riddance, since he never paid for food, but Layla pulled the napkin drawings from her apron pocket, her voice steady but soft as she told the truth. Feeding Theodore wasn't about pity, she said, but about giving him what she once needed herself, the feeling of not being invisible. Mr. Whitaker stood then, and revealed what few in the diner knew. Theodore Carter was the son of Sergeant Daniel Carter, a soldier killed in action 6 months earlier, and his mother was still working double hospital shifts to keep the family afloat. The boy wandered because he was searching for an anchor, and somehow, Layla had become that anchor. Everett's composure broke. Grief flickered across his face, and when he spoke, his voice was raw. "And you became that anchor." In that moment, Chloe, who had been so eager to tear Layla down, lowered her phone with tears in her eyes. She admitted the comments on her video had changed. People were no longer mocking. They were sharing stories of their own struggles, asking where they could donate, money already flowing in. Everett reached into his coat with trembling hands and set a yellowed envelope on the table. His name, he revealed, was Everett Hayes, CEO of Hayes Logistics, and 3 weeks earlier this very letter had arrived at his office through military channels. It had been written by Sergeant Daniel Carter himself, addressed not to Everett directly but simply to the owner of the business near Murphy's Diner. The diner fell silent as Everett unfolded the paper, his hands shaking, and began to read the last words of a soldier who had foreseen his son's loneliness and begged that someone, anyone, might watch over him in his absence. Everett's voice trembled as he read, Sergeant Daniel Carter's words. The ink faded, but the love behind them indelible. In the letter, Daniel wrote of his fears that if he did not return from war, his young son would lose not only a father, but also his sense of safety. He begged that anyone who found the letter look out for Theodore, especially near Murphy's Diner, the place the boy always loved because of the smell of pancakes and the hum of people who seemed like family. "If you see him," the soldier had written, "please make sure he never feels invisible." When Everett finished, the diner was silent, every customer holding their breath. Theodore had returned without anyone noticing, standing barefoot just inside the doorway. His face was streaked with rain, his small hands clutching another napkin drawing, this time of a soldier holding hands with a woman who looked uncannily like Layla. Slowly, he crossed the floor and slipped the drawing into her palm. "I heard him," he whispered. "My dad. I heard him." Something broke open in the diner that night. People who had once whispered cruelly now reached into their wallets. Chloe deleted her original video and posted a new one, this time showing Layla's trembling hands as she held the napkin drawings and the soldier's letter, her voice cracking as she told the world that all she had ever wanted was to make one child feel seen. Within hours, the video spread far beyond the town. Strangers across the country donated $10, $50, $100, until the total passed 10,000, then 20. Messages poured in from people who had once been Theodore themselves, children who remembered a single act of kindness that kept them alive. Everett, moved beyond words, pledged the first $1 million of his fortune to start something bigger. The Theodore Carter Foundation, dedicated to feeding and mentoring children who slipped through society's cracks. He announced it right there in the diner, his voice breaking as Theodore clung to Layla's waist. Linda, the hardened manager who once threatened to fire her, wiped tears from her eyes and admitted she had been wrong. Mr. Whitaker offered to volunteer his retirement years to teaching the children who came through the program. Even Chloe, ashamed of her envy, promised to use her camera for truth rather than mockery. Weeks later, Murphy's Diner was no longer just a diner. On its walls hung Theodore's napkin drawings, framed in simple wood. A corner booth was reserved in memory of Sergeant Daniel Carter, with his folded flag and letter placed under glass. Every morning, children came through the doors, some hungry for food, others for belonging, all of them greeted by Layla's quiet smile and the promise that they were not invisible. One evening, as the sun bled gold through the windows, Theodore sat across from Everett, pencil in hand, sketching a new drawing. A tall man with dark hair, a kind waitress with hazel eyes, and himself between them, holding both their hands. He slid it across the table shyly. "This is us now," he said. Everett's throat closed, unable to reply, but Layla leaned down and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart, this is us now." And so the story of a quiet waitress, a grieving boy, and a stranger with power became something larger than themselves. What began as a plate of unwanted pancakes in a small-town diner grew into a movement that fed thousands. In the end, it was not grand speeches or viral fame that changed the world, but the simple courage to notice one hungry child and refuse to look away.